I'm here at the European Development Days in Brussels, and with me is Elsa Scholte from SNV. Elsa, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
SNV is working a lot in value chains and trying to improve the access of small farmers to value chains.
Yeah.
What is going wrong there, and what are you trying to change?
Well, what you see is that the world is getting small, and more produce that we buy in our supermarkets is actually coming from developing countries. On the other hand, it's often big businesses in countries that profit from that. They have the quality that the supermarkets in European countries want. They have a steady produce, so they can deliver the kind of products that we want, and they make all the revenues actually. And what you see is that small farmers are still struggling. And small farmers, it's in many developing countries, they are quite a large proportion of the population. And they mainly have a very small acre of land where they grow some maize and just something for their own subsistence. And I was just a few weeks ago, I was in Zimbabwe, and I spoke to farmers who previously they earned like $100 a year. Yeah, barely enough to feed their children, to send their children to school, but clothing or anything luxury they couldn't afford. And what SNV has been doing is looking at the value chain of products in such a country. Where is a need? And for example, it appeared as this area was particularly good for growing bananas. And there was a huge demand for bananas, both locally in the country, in the region throughout Africa, but even in Europe. So there were quite some people that wanted those bananas, but the farmers were not producing the quality that the importer wanted. So what we did is actually to work with the farmers, improve the quality of the bananas, so that they could deliver to the wholesaler. And that's a long process. It's not something that happens within a few days. Usually farmers were quite skeptic in the beginning, like, okay, we've been doing it like this for years, so why should we all of a sudden change the way we grow bananas? I mean, they're fine, they taste good. But we started to work with some farmers, and they were able to supply their goods to the wholesaler and get a better price for it. And then other farmers started to use the same methods. And what you see now, I talked to one farmer, he says, well, I now earn $2,000 a year instead of 100. So it's 20 times the income a year by actually improving production methods and connecting them to the wholesale, connecting them to the value chain.
So how can aid organizations help in that process?
I think one of the important roles that aid organizations can play is that they can oversee the value chain from the Western countries to the local farmer, and see where they can intervene or assist. Because the thing with value chains is if there's a blockage somewhere in the chain, it goes wrong. You know, you may have a great produce, that's one. You may have a wholesaler that likes it, that's two. But if there's no good distributor or there's no road to transport, it still goes wrong. So you need actually organizations that can make the connections, and that may be to someone who can supply infrastructure, or to the government to work with tax regulations. We've also seen in countries that actually the local produce is much more expensive than the produce that comes from a country that is thousands of miles away from that country. And you see them next to one another. And the local produce is more expensive. And you know, you could work with governments, for example, to raise taxes in order to make the local produce more attractive for the local market.
It seems like there are a lot of solutions, and we're going to be hearing a whole bunch more about this.
Yes, yeah.
I think we're going to have to leave it at that, but thank you so much for being here.
And most welcome.
And thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned to Devex.